Hi there, I'm Grace McNab. I teach music theory at Capilano University. I'd like to share some of my ideas about that subject with you, and particularly musical form and ways in which we can enrich our study of that and keep the music very much in music theory. To appreciate the full depth of the long, short, long pattern, I'd like you to imagine for a minute that we're sending this as some kind of a message to another galaxy and seeing how they're going to interpret it. So they're visualize people looking at this picture. What might they think it meant? Would they see it as some kind of picture of our society? Perhaps some kind of parental figures, offspring, and leaders of some sort. Maybe they might see it as a planetary familial tree of some sort. Maybe a government structure or some kind of a system of relationships. But we can't even be sure which way they would read it. We don't necessarily know they would understand it as being two balanced things at a beginning, followed by some form of more involved offshoot, and then a final event. They might actually see it as somehow a branching type of event, starting with something consolidated and growing from there. First question, how would they see the greens? Two very different ways of looking at this situation. Would they see them as virtually identical, as for example in a little bit of Mozart? Or maybe another little bit of Mozart. Or would they see them as opposite? Would they see them as being in harmony with each other? Or in confrontation? Would they see them as a supportive pair? Perhaps even capable of regenerating. Would they view the yellow pair as some kind of offspring? And what of the mysterious blue? Would it be the beginning? Would it be the end? Would it be the summation? Would it be the initiator? Would it be older and wiser, or some kind of a kernel from where everything began? Here are some playful musical scenarios for you. Let's do that last example just one more time, because this example by Beethoven has a very playful argument that almost gets out of control. It uses a chord that music theory students kind of would love. G7 flat 9. Okay, so this example from Beethoven again. And note, by the way, I'll sing it for you here. Da ya da ba da 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 dum bum ba dum. Ba ya da dee da 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 dim bum ba dum. Da 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 la da dee da 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 ba da 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 ba da 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 dum bum ba dum. And now we'll play it in tune here. Dark green, light green. Couldn't be more carefree until get it all under control. And he does it again. Okay, next scenario, blue as reconciler. Well, it's kind of, I guess Tchaikovsky works for this. I'm going to play Tchaikovsky again here, just so we can hear the same thing twice tonight. Statement. Response. Conflict in one direction. Other direction. A kind of a somber conclusion, which has a little of the angst of the argument, but the certainty of the beginning. Okay, and the chords there actually refer to a different musical example that I think you all know as well, the Mozart Eine kleine Nachtmusik. So once again, we have the opening, G. The response, which in this case is of the opposing variety, D7. Now we have multiple, I guess, support for either side of the argument. Nothing but G and D7. G, D7, G, D, G, G, D. Resolution. And in fact, the reason the fingernails are painted so beautifully here, you notice they're painted in the color code for the entire event so far. Ba-dum, ba-da-bum, ba-da-dum, da-da-dum, ba-da-da-da-dum, bum, bum. Okay, so that conclusion bears within its own fist a lot of all the material we referred before and introducing new factors which put an end to the debate for once and for all, kind of bringing in outside assistance from some different chords. Okay, moving along. This is a little bit of a subtle one, but sometimes it feels as though the bottom of the music just gets dropped out during the fragmentation section and the cadence has to provide a lot of support for it. I think I'll play a more complex example for you. Can you imagine a lot of tumbling yellow hands here? Because Mozart gets very carried away in his fragmentation, and then his conclusion is literally a plateau. You'll hear some repeated chords in the bass, helping provide a foundation for his conclusion. This is a very famous example. Statement, response, fragments, fragment, 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 plateau. And I'd like you to notice that even within that solid ending, there was an echo. Ba-da-da-da, ba-da-da-da, bum, bum, bum. Long, long, short, short, long. So the blue not only consolidates harmonically, he consolidates the time proportions that have been being expressed so far, and he does it within a quarter of the time or a half of the time. So you get a kind of I guess I'd call it a synoptic memory of the whole, and that's why it sounds so brilliantly exclamatory at the end. Okay, this is a really subtle one. Sometimes when you're listening to a statement, a response, and a fragmentation and a cadence, it turns out that if you join the yellow and blue part of our orchestra here, you can hear in a way that it's a little bit like a short, short, long, like just the tail end of the whole structure. So sometimes in retrospect, it feels a little bit like those statements and responses weren't so secure after all. And so I like to make a little bit of a joke, reminding me, I think you will recognize this, when someone says gotcha, and somebody else says, who's got you? This is a little bit different from that. This is, what do you think, who's got us? Do those statements and responses always really stand alone? So I guess maybe a nice example would be this portion of a Beethoven theme. Green, dark. Light. Here comes the fragment. Yellow number 1. Yellow number 2. And here's the grand blue. And now the yellow, yellow, blue gets repeated. So in that way, sometimes the roles change while we're listening to the music. Things we thought were pretty secure end up being dependent on other things. Okay, so the realization that we're running out of battery, role reversals can happen. And things that seemed like just the offspring eventually can become part of a support network for what went before.